The capture of Nicolas Maduro and the president's subsequent threats against Cuba, Mexico, Colombia, and Greenland have the world on edge. Eurasia Group's annual risk report is taking note. Quote, the United States is itself unwinding its own global order. Joining us, president and founder of Eurasia Group and G0 Media, Ian Bremmer. So, Ian, in terms of threats, you list right at the top the United States itself.
Sure. Thanks, Katie. This is the United States, the most powerful country in the world, is driving the lion's share of the geopolitical risk and uncertainty all over the world. It's about how the American political system is going to operate itself, and also about how the U.S. is going to project power around the world, becoming so much less reliable for its friends. And it's not that the actions that we saw in Venezuela over the weekend are going to embolden Russia in Ukraine or embolden China in Taiwan. It doesn't make bad actors into worse actors. They're already bad actors. What it does is it makes American allies much less willing to rely on, to engage with the United States long term. It weakens the U.S. with its friends. That's the challenge.
So when you say we're unwinding the global order that we set up, what does that mean exactly?
Well, if you think about the things that the Americans were committed to, not just the institutions that stood up, like the United Nations and the World Bank and the IMF, but also the principles of collective security. The United States would be an anchor for a global umbrella of security that its allies could rely on. The architect of free trade, that it would stand up multilateral institutions and architecture to reduce tariffs and ensure that goods and services and people and ideas and capital could move more easily across borders all over the world, and that the United States would promote rule of law and democracy internationally, not always consistently, frequently hypocritically, but nonetheless, at the end of the day, more often than not. Those are precisely the things that lots of Americans increasingly don't believe in, and that President Trump himself is absolutely abdicating on. And he's not the cause of all of this. He's a symptom. He's a beneficiary, but he's clearly an accelerant. And that's what we're seeing with the Don Roe doctrine in America's backyard.
So the leader of Denmark has said that if the president tries to take Greenland, a NATO country attacking a NATO country, that's the end of NATO. My question is, why does the U.S. feel like it needs to take Greenland? If the U.S. wanted another base in Greenland, if the U.S. wanted more soldiers in Greenland, if the U.S. wanted whatever in Greenland, would the Danish government be stopping us?
I assume it's all the fentanyl export from Greenland coming into the United States, Katie.
I can hear the sarcasm.
Yeah, there is a bit of that. No, that is, of course, the maddening thing about all of this is that if the Americans just picked up the phone to talk to the leadership of Denmark, to the Danish prime minister, they could work out all of those things. What they can't have is control of Greenland. They can't have, sovereignty over Greenland. That's an imperial exercise. The U.S. has no legal right or call on that. But that appears to be what President Trump wants. It's certainly what Stephen Miller has been talking about. Now, here's the other side of that problem. Yes, if the Americans were going to invade Greenland, that would be the end of NATO. But the Americans aren't going to invade Greenland any more than the Russians are going to roll tanks into Poland. That's not the way you do it. You do it asymmetrically. You do it with influence campaigns, with carrots and sticks directly with Greenland as opposed to with Denmark, disinformation, pressure, all of which incrementally are going to be very, very hard for the Danes or anyone else in Europe to effectively respond to.
You mentioned Stephen Miller. He's been talking romantically lately about going back 120 years to a colonial period, arguing that the neoliberal order after the World Wars, World War II, has not benefited the public across the globe, hasn't benefited anybody. And he's arguing that what really needs to happen is a re-exertion of strength in hemispheric zones. Let's go back 120 years, Ian. Isn't part of what the world order and as it stood 120 years ago what led us into two devastating world wars?
In part, but I think the nostalgia for earlier periods sort of dispense with the fact that over the last 40 years, America has benefited far more than its allies
so
from
why do they
the global
continue
order
to
that the
believe
United
that we're
States
not
has stood up.
benefiting? I mean, because they continue to ignore that and say that we've been taken advantage of. What is the disconnect?
Well, the disconnect is that American allies are weaker and they haven't spent on the defense and they aren't growing very much and they're not very productive and their demographics are lousy. And so it's much easier for the United States to say, well, what do we need these countries for? Why don't we just determine the outcomes and we can ride them harder? In the same way that if you want a ceasefire in Ukraine, it's easier to ride the Ukrainians harder than the Russians, not because you like the Ukrainians less, but because the Ukrainians are supplicants who are going to have to capitulate. Where the Russians are stronger, they can hit you back harder. China can hit back the United States a lot harder. So after China tried to hit them hard with tariffs, he backed down. And now he talks about a G2 as opposed to a G7 or a G20. That's what we're talking about here.